Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video. This time, I feel like I'm finally getting to my July Musings video where I talk about everything tarot, books, experiences, and things that I actually did in the month of July. I know. I feel like I had a lot of different videos talking about things like, well, my birthday was a big thing that happened during the month of July. But I'm not going to get fully into that, of course, because I do have a birthday haul video if you want to watch that. So you might be thinking, then what's this video? And really, it's just to talk about books I read, maybe things I watched or experienced during the month, and also, of course, talk about tarot because I actually did do a lot of tarot during the month of July and also in June in that vein. Like both of those months were big months for that. So today I think, I'm thinking of all things. I'm going to start with experiences and then slowly talk about like books and other things. So during the month of July, first off, it was kind of chaotic. I will show you what cards I had. So the month of July was basically, there we go. Now they're actually in frame. My bad. Month of July, my card of the month. Let's start there before I dive into the rest of the things, because then it'll explain the tone. Month of July, Six of Wands, victory, right? That's usually what it's talking about. But the interesting thing, and the thing I'm kind of still mulling over is, did I really have a victory, or in what way was I victorious? It's something to think about. Or it could just be the fact of a celebration, kind of like in relation of the Four of Wands. Sometimes I see the Six as that kind of thing too, especially with this version from the Northern Animal Tarot, you know. It is victorious, but it seems more like a celebration at the same time. So that's what I've been contemplating. But Six of Wands was a time of, I guess, victory, or was supposed to be for me. And I have mixed thoughts on that because it was it was kind of a chaotic month. In the beginning of the month, I was actually still in Canada. So I was in, the Ontario-ish regions, really enjoyed my time. And I think I talked about it actually in my June Musings video, but during that first week of July, before we were about to leave, I was doing tarot readings. So I did a lot of tarot readings for my partner's family. So yeah, it was like a whole day where I like read 5 people's cards. It was a lot. So I was kind of like in experiences, but at the same time, when we got back, I had a week maybe where I had a lull. I could do whatever, like just try to refuel a bit, even though I was getting like really stressed out just because I knew I was going back to work. And then, the last parts of the month were like birthday related stuff. And I went back to work and it was very chaotic and very stressful. And there was a lot of things to plan for. So seeing this as like kind of my card of the month, I'm still trying to work in there. Where was I victorious? If I look in the vein of maybe tarot, I would say yes. Because it was when I was doing those readings, like those 5 different readings I was doing for people, I noticed in myself this, how do I phrase this? I noticed in myself this kind of mastery of the tarot. I don't want to say I'm a master, but I knew the cards enough that I could give a reading pretty easily to them and explain what it could say in the context. Like I felt very assured. So maybe that's where the victory goes. And tarot related things, I do feel like I was pretty victorious, and that's like amazing. You know what I mean? Like to come to a point in the cards where I was able to give very impactful readings that they also appreciated and they realized resonated with them, because that's what they told me, right? Like after, they were like, wow, this is crazy how accurate this is. And I was like, yeah, because tarot sometimes can be, because I definitely did not feel as victorious when it comes to like work stuff. But I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm still stressed about it. I'm still thinking about that. But yeah, that's kind of in the experience vein. Oh, by the way, also, again, I always talk about this sometimes if I'm filming in the mornings. I have my morning coffee, so I'm going to take a sip. And then let's kind of talk about, kind of in relation to this, thinking of things, and to bleed into talking about books. I did watch, I feel like I watched a lot of TV in July, but I'm trying to think about like what were the key things. I feel like I was for sure watching a lot of, I started watching this anime. Now, granted, I have watched anime in the past, but it's been a long time since I've watched like legit Japanese like anime. But I started watching Demon Slayer because the kids at my work, funny enough, kept talking about Demon Slayer, and I was like, you know what? I just need to get this out of the way. I'm gonna watch it. If I remember to get a picture somewhere on the internets, I will put a picture on the screen of it. If I don't, sorry, look it up. But Demon Slayer is very popular right now. It's very good. I was really shocked at how good it was. I mean, it's just to say that like sometimes anime it is good. There's a lot that are good, but there are some that are really trash because they're just like really, some more inappropriate things that aren't always like PG and stuff. But Demon Slayer is not like that. Very, very good. I watch a lot of Demon Slayer. I started watching a show, Suits, with my partner. So now we're like watching Suits. It's like a businessy show. Meghan Markle's old show, like the reason why she became, I guess, all famous, which is hilarious to me. I don't know. I never watched it in its prime, but my partner did. So we're going back and we're watching a bunch of episodes of Suits. And what was the other thing I watched? The Dragon Prince. If you guys don't know what that is on Netflix, it's a DreamWorks animated show, but I decided to finally watch seasons 4 and 5 because I hadn't seen those before. So yeah, I watched a lot of TV. See, it was at least a time where I got to like I had downtime, and so I was able to relax and do that. So yeah. Now, I'm going to take these away for now so I can show you guys books, and then I swear I'm going to get back into more tarot things at the end of this video. So let me just move these cards for now. Okay, let's talk about books. I actually slowed down in the month of July. Sorry, pause for the coffee. I slowed down in the month of July. I thought I was going to read more books than I realized I actually did. But I think there's a reason for my slowdown. And it's specifically that 2 of the 3 I'm going to show you I don't know what it was about them. I do. It's both of them slow down my reading in very significant ways. So I was not as enthused to read, okay? Let me start with the one book I did actually like a lot this month, okay? The first book out of the 3 that I read in the month of July was Morgan Is My Name by Sophie Keach. I think it's Keach because it's double E's, so I'm going to assume it's Keach. If I'm wrong, sorry. But Morgan Is My Name. I really liked this one. I would even go so far to say that it's currently sitting at like I would say it's 4.5 or ish range. It's not a complete 5 because of one thing, and I'm going to get to that. But this book, I actually got it when I was you guys probably saw that. I actually got it when I was in Canada. So it does give you, US $18, Canadian $24.95, and it even says Random House Canada. So I am curious to know if this book is just a Canadian series or whatever, or if this actually has been in the US market. I'm not 100%, but let me tell you guys, those curious, if you like Arthurian legends or are interested in getting into them and want a book that is pretty accurate to, okay, and let me explain even what pretty accurate is. Why, right? Wow, what's going on my words today? Sorry, guys. when I say accurate, I'm talking about Le Morte d'Arthur's in particular, because the thing with Arthurian legends, if you don't know anything about like the closest to canon thing, is that there are so many different tales by so many different authors, and it's hard to figure out what is the most accepted, I guess. But a lot of people, arguably, Le Morte d'Arthur is kind of the best collection of the whole story of King Arthur. Okay, so in accuracy of that, this follows pretty closely the accuracy piece, okay? And that's why I really, really liked this. Like, I could tell that this author actually read, Le Morte d'Arthur at one point in time. Really liked it for that reason. Morgan Le Fay is the main character of this book. It basically covers the first, I guess it would, if you had to think of her life in thirds, because I would like to think of it that way. If you had to think of her life in thirds, this covers the first third of her life. Okay. And here's the thing. The reason why it's a 4.5 is because I don't know if this is actually true or not. If this book see, it has no labeling to say otherwise. If this book is really what I heard the rumor, that it's only the first book in what might be either a duology or a trilogy, then it's a pretty good start. And I would give it a 5. If this is meant to be a standalone, though, this isn't, if it's meant to be a standalone about Morgan Le Fay, I have to knock down some star ratings for it, because then it feels incomplete. It really, because this book, the way it stops is like it stops basically when she discovers who she is, and when I don't want to give spoilers. I don't know if I should give spoilers, especially if you guys don't know anything of the story of Morgan Le Fay, but it comes to a point where she's barely realizing her power. So let me explain it that way. Now, would I recommend this book for people who really want to read like a more modern telling of Arthurian tales? Yes, 100%. I would recommend this. And by the way, this is my point to tell you. If you've ever heard people say, oh, what about the Mists of Avalon? I'm going to tell you straight away, no. Do not read the Mist of Avalon. That book is awful. And the author is actually, well, her and her husband are very problematic. I'm not going to get into it right now, but there's a lot of gross things involving them and potentially children. That's all I'm going to really say. So yeah, don't read The Mist of Avalon. That book is awful. I really didn't like that. I read it some years back and it's not great. So what would I recommend instead? This one. So it's very accurate to Morgan Le Fay's life, her tale, what she has to do. If you're expecting this, though, to be a book where Arthur shows up a lot, he really doesn't. His main role is at the beginning and more at the end of this book. So, yeah, that's what I mean about it doesn't feel 100% complete, because it doesn't go into a lot of the stuff involving her. So I do hope this is only the first in what will be a bigger series. But I really did like it, and I would recommend it. So there's that. I'm going to move on from this, though. I feel like I didn't give as much of a bit, but again, this is only the first third of Morgan Le Fay's life. It really starts with her origins, like who her family is, the whole stuff involving Uther and the birth of Arthur and things related to that nature. It does not dive into the actual acts of Morgan Le Fay that start taking place later in Arthurian legends. So yeah, but I'm going to move on from this. Book number 2 that I read during the month of July. Yeah. This one. I actually need a big sip of coffee for this one. Lore. This book, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this. It's hard. This book, no offense, was kind of awful. Oh, I'm sorry. Listen. If you don't like me ranting about books, I'm sorry. You can skip ahead. just ignore my sections on books because you're going to hear also more ranting for the next book kind of too. But if you don't mind ranting, stay with me here. This book was not great. I'm sorry, Alexandra Bracken, but no. If you are someone who actually likes Greek mythology related things, I would not recommend this book. Please don't waste your time. Don't read this. Don't. It's not the Here's the thing though. From a writing craft perspective, like writing, just actual like words on a page, not even just like how the story is arranged, the actual words on the page, it's not the worst book I've ever read. So this does sit somewhere in like a 2-star area, not a complete 1-star. In that way, writing wise, fine. Okay, writing's not that bad. But story craft wise, this book was not great. Because, okay, let me try, that's the other keyword here. I have to try to explain the plot because the plot got very convoluted very quickly. In this version of the world, there are Greek gods, okay? Let's start there. There are Greek gods who are being hunted every 7 years by descendants of Greek heroes who are trying to kill them and take their power. You would think that sounds interesting and cool, but it got very annoying and kind of weird at the same time because I feel like it was never fully explained why. Why are they being hunted? Oh, well, you get this vague idea that, oh, Zeus did it. Zeus wanted them to pay. Pay for what exactly? They kind of explained it, but they didn't at the same time. It was one of those things where I was left thinking, this isn't believable. Why would Zeus, in that vein, even cast all his children out of Olympus so that these heroes of old, or like descendants of heroes, would kill them? It didn't. You see what I mean here? It doesn't make sense as a plot to begin with. Like I was just found, and that's the thing with fiction. You need to be able to suspend readers' belief. So if I was having a hard time wrapping my mind around the concept, that's already when you know you failed step 1. Because if people don't believe that could be possible, it's just not going to make sense as you write it. The other thing about this, besides the actual like plot of it, right, is so most of the story, by the way, takes place in New York City. It starts another event where, you know, all these hunters, the descendants of heroes like Odysseus, Hercules, Cadmus, the main character, Lore, who is a descendant of Perseus, I mean, they all were fighting and trying to kill each other. Basically, most of this book was them like all killing each other off. Yeah, which I also didn't understand. Like, I don't know. I didn't understand if the hunters are supposed to be hunting the gods. Why? Well, why? And then why were they killing each other to hunt the gods? It didn't. I mean, because, okay, explain that when people killed, right, the old god, if an old god died, the person who did it got their power. So I guess the other hunters were going after the other families. And okay, fine. But at the same time, it just seems like an endless cycle loop. And then again, it also makes you question, okay, if Zeus did this to his children, why would he keep allowing it to go if all these new gods were taking their place? You know what I mean? Like, what is the point of the punishment then? Because the new gods aren't even involved in that. So, again, there's a lot of plot things that just didn't make sense to me. And it got very convoluted quick. And the other thing that kind of got me was the characters. They didn't... How do I explain this? The only 2 characters that really felt like they were characters were Lore, I guess, and maybe, what was his name? Castor? Yeah, one of them is named Castor, by the way, even though he's not like the old Castor. Castor and Lore were pretty much the only ones that felt like actual characters. The others kind of did in some respects, but they kind of felt like cardboard cutouts. And even Lore was very flippy floppy in what she believed and who she was. And it was a lot of character things that didn't make sense, a lot of plot that didn't make sense. And then, oh yeah, and there was supposed to be like a romance, kind of. There was, but there wasn't. Like, there was a romance in this. Do I think it was fully fleshed out, though? No. If you're going into this thinking, oh, I'm going to read this cute story about romantic elements, blah, blah, blah. No, it barely has it. And then it does. Everything's golden and beautiful by the end. And you're just like, is it, though? No. And again, there's a lot of things that don't. I could chalk this up, if I had to summarize this book in one phrase, as it doesn't make sense. And so for that reason, would I recommend this if you're a fan of Greek mythology? No. Please save your time and read something else. I know a lot of people recommend Percy Jackson, by the way. I haven't actually read those yet. I have a reason why. I'm not going to explain it right now, but I haven't read them. I am going to start trying to read them this year, though. But yeah. So Lore, no thank you, and I'm going to move on. Last book I read, well, okay, let me rephrase this. I started reading this book in the month of July, and technically I'm still not done with it. So I'm going to have more thoughts on this book at the end of August, but let's go into this. Last book I started to read in July was Dune by Frank Herbert. I know, I had never read Dune. And there's good reasons why I haven't read Dune, if you're not familiar with some of the controversy of this book. I don't know everything about the author per se, but reasons why I was very hesitant to read Dune, even though I very much knew it was prevalent, in sci-fi books, I was aware of it. I was aware of it for many, many years. Reason why I never got into it, though, is because I knew that the author had some problematic elements in the book. Now, you could say, well, Frank Herbert originally wrote this book. Actually, I don't know. I think it was this. Let's see if this will tell me. I think it was originally in the 60s or 70s. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, 1965. There you go. The year my dad was born, this book came out. So if you examine it under that lens, then you're going to say, okay, fine, it's a product of its time. But even if it's a product of its time, I do believe that if a book doesn't hold up to now, you don't need to worship it, even if it was a product of its time. I know, very controversial to say, but let me get into the whys I was hesitant. If you don't know anything about Dune, this is the story of Paul Atreides, as his family is told by, I guess, the Emperor of... I don't even know where they are, to be honest. Like, that's never explained either, like what corner of the universe they're in. But the emperor of that corner of the universe basically orders his family to go to this desert planet called Arrakis and take it over, right? Be basically colonizers. Yeah, so that's basically where that starts. So you can already tell there's already imperialistic stuff in here. And there's also some elements, for those who are curious about, like, why is this book problematic? It has issues with the white savior trope. It also has issues with the fact that most of the people of color in this book are either, like, killed off or just not shown as being in the best light. I don't know how else to explain that. Oh, yeah, and one of... the only, actually, that I know of so far as of reading this, because, by the way, I'm a little past the halfway mark. I still have, even though it looks like I have a lot more, I actually only have about 200 pages of the actual book left. There is stuff where, as someone who's, queer, the only queer-coded character in this whole book ends up being the villain, so obviously you can see that's not great. And again, this was a product of its time. So all those things kind of added up to me being like, I don't know if I really want to read this. And the only reason why I decided to read it was because I did watch Dune, the movie, some time ago. I watched Dune the movie, and I have to say, even though I'm not fully done with this book, I think the movie did a better job of succinctly explaining this plot than this book did. So if I had to say movie or book, I would actually say new movies, not this book, because okay, the writing isn't completely bad in this either. I'm not going to like completely diss it for that thing. My problem is, though, that some of the writing things that Herbert does is very, very, very annoying to me. Just me. Just me. This is, again, subjective, right? Because somebody else could be reading this book and not even have a problem with it. But he tries to make a lot of use of repetition that isn't effective, in my opinion. It's not effective. Like, he'll repeat the same line and then repeat it again later down the line, and repeat it again later down the line, but it's not in a good way. It's just off and weird based on like what's written above and below it, you know? So things like that, and just like weird caricature moments with characters, because he'll like repeat like like these weird like mustache twirling like remarks in here. I guess again, product of its time maybe, but how do I 100% feel? Right now, this is sitting solidly in a 3. It's not the greatest book. There's problematic elements that are kind of bothering me in between, and that's probably why I've slowed down a lot and haven't completely finished this book. I don't know how I'm going to feel by the end, so I will come back and touch base about the ending of the book. So far, based on the main plot, though, I feel like there are things that could have been wrapped up a little quicker. It's just really, really slow kind of in the beginning. There's a lot of things that don't need to be there, which is why I think the movie did a better job of explaining, interestingly enough, only the first half of this book. So I guess Dune Part 2, whenever that movie comes out, we'll talk about the second half of the book. But yeah, so far, it's just a 3 read for me. I don't know. I don't understand why people lord this over so much, because there's a lot of things writing-wise that I just think could have been better. But anyways, that's it with books. Let's talk about actual tarot. Instead of me ranting about books. And I'm going to drink the last of my coffee in that vein. July, as I said, was a month where I did a lot of tarot. I actually did a lot of tarot. I'm going to show these 2 decks first. So people probably saw these for my June video, and I talked about it even in my June video, but I'm going to talk about it again now. Is during the month of July, during that first week of July, really, I was doing readings for other people. And I mentioned that earlier in this video, right? I was doing readings for other people, and they were very profound, but I used both the mini Roots and Wings Oracle. This is the imperfect edition, by the way, and the Northern Animal Tarot to do them. And these decks, they did such a good job. They did such a good job. The people I read for felt very, I could tell they felt kind of relieved, and they knew like what to think about for at least the next few weeks or months or however long they reflected on it, you know. I'm just going to show them like this. These are the backs. Or actually, this way. You might be thinking that's kind of odd, but then I'm going to go like so. These worked really well together, even though this deck, as you can see, has a lot of like white space. I think the reason why they went well together is because even though this one has more white space than this, and this is very colorful, is because they both have like very nature-y vibes. And so some of these keywords, especially on the Roots and Wings, were just exactly what they needed. And it was really interesting to see too, because a lot of them were having very overlapping thoughts, overlapping keywords, even some overlapping cards, only because like if you don't, you know, sometimes if you don't shuffle the deck, or even just because you're both going on like similar life path trajectory. There we go. I can actually talk. And they are one family. So, you know, there's a lot of things that were like similar. But it was really beautiful to be able to do readings with both of these. If you're interested, how did I do it? I talked about in my other video, I did that 9-card spread as the main spread because Celtic Cross, here's the thing. My partner's family is Indian, okay? So they're more related. Tarot, not far off for them, like at all. Astrology is a big thing in India. And not just astrology, but even things like tarot and like reading cards, reading palms, stuff like that. It's very big. And so they were like fine with it. But the reason why I did that 9-card spread for them instead of what you would think is a traditional Celtic cross is because I felt like, how do I explain this? It felt more right to do that 9-card spread than to do a traditional Celtic cross because they just wanted a general reading. They didn't necessarily have a specific question. And I feel like the Celtic cross is usually for like those big nebulous questions and stuff. And they didn't have that. So I aligned them with their elements. I aligned them with past, present, future, as that 9-card spread is. And I think it worked really well for them. So it was just nice to be able to do that, and I think they really liked it. I do. I almost got to with him. They were like, oh, I gotta go get my own tarot deck now. But I don't know if they're actually going to. But they enjoyed the reading in that way. And so that definitely was a victory in many ways. So for that part of tarot, these decks did their job and it was very nice. So I was glad I was able to do that. Now, what almost happened, but I refrained. I decided not to do this. I almost told more of my friends that I read tarot, and I was very tempted to read cards for them, but it wasn't the mood of that day when I had my tea party, so I didn't do that. It was almost like a tea and tarot thing. Maybe next time, but this time around, I just didn't feel like doing that, and so I did not. But yeah, those two were like honorable mentions, I guess. They weren't technically my designated decks for the month, but because I was still in Canada, I only had a couple decks with me, so I used those for those early July readings. I also actually want to give a quick shout out to my mini Oak Ash and Thorn deck. I'm barely going to talk about this. I'm barely going to show it, but I will. This was not originally a deck that I used during the month of July, okay? I did not originally decide I was going to do this, but I used it. You guys probably have seen it. I had the Zodiacs in Me spread. I did it with this deck, and part of the reason why I did it with this deck was because, obviously, as you can see, this deck is a smaller version than their normal than their normal Oak, Ash, and Thorn. I actually really hope if, I don't know if they ever would, if Three Trees Tarot ever sees this video, please, 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 I hope you have plans to make this size and this like thickness of cardstock for the regular Smoke Ash and Embers, because I do have the full size of that, but this is honestly the best size. This is manageable. This I can actually hold in my hands. This I feel like pulling out more, and I used it because it's a smaller size. When decks are smaller, easier to use, you can use more cards to do a big spread. So this is kind of an honorable mention. I wasn't intending to use this deck at the start of this month. It just happened to be that way because I was doing a specific reading. But yeah, that's why I'm talking about it, because I do actually have it logged in my tarot journal, obviously, that I did the Zodiac spread. And so yeah, I needed to shout out this deck because it was during the month of July. Okay. Next up, other decks I used in the month of July. Well, you saw them actually when I was talking about my card of the month, being the Six of Wands. I used very specific decks during the month of July. The first one I'm going to talk about is the one that I used the least amount, and that was this one. If you saw my birthday haul video, you know that this pouch now houses my Dungeons and Dragons tarot. As you can see, I have edged mine in black. I'm debating if I want to edge it over again because I kind of like the look of it. It matches with this. I could make it darker though, but I kind of don't want to. I kind of like where it's at. This is the backs of the Dungeons and Dragons tarot. It's got an interesting, it's kind of thick. It's like, I almost would call this pseudo linen. It looks linen on the front and the back, but when you're actually holding it, you know it's like thicker and different than linen. Anyways, I know that's a little confusing. Let me just get into showing cards. I was hoping to use this deck more in the month of July, but it just didn't work out that way because by the time that I got back from my Canadian trip, I really just used this to do a week ahead spread as I normally do, and didn't use it to do really anything else. It would have been cool as a different spread. I almost debated doing it for the Zodiac spread. The problem with that would have been, of course, that this deck, to show it on camera, because I decided to show that one on camera, this is a very long deck. It would not have fit all the cards in frame. Even even using the mini Oak, Ash, and Thorn, it was still a little bit of a struggle. Just because I probably just should have used my smallest deck, to be honest. But yeah, because of those reasons, because I was like doing very specific things, I didn't pull out this deck again, which is very sad because I love D&D and I do love this deck, but I feel like I've talked about it a lot. I did even do an in-depth walkthrough of my thoughts and things. So you can check that out too somewhere on my channel. It's all there. But yeah, I did like that I did this deck. And I also, by the way, you guys are going to notice, I noticed it after I picked them. Most of these decks seem to have a theme here where there's a lot of black in them. Why did I pick decks with a lot of black? I don't know. I guess that was my mood for the month of July. I was just like, I need all the black edged and black decks that I have. They were all in there together. And yeah, so there's that. Okay. Next up, besides doing the D&D tarot, I also used so I only had these two oracles for the month of July. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Jesus, my thing almost fell. Oh, nope, now it's confused. I'm so sorry. Wow. If only I had paused my video at that time. I thought about it. But you know what? You guys are getting an authentic experience here. Anyways, my bad. I only used these oracles during the month of July. It wasn't really an oracle month for me, but I did use these, and I did actually use them to do a spread that's in the deck of emblems. The spread in the deck of emblems is called the Compass Spread. And I decided I needed it because at that time I was very wayward in my thoughts and feelings and actions and stuff. So I thought that doing the Compass Spread was going to be beneficial for me. It was a more private spread. Didn't do that for anybody else, right? Didn't put it on camera. It was just something I wanted to do. But these decks really shone. So as you can tell, I have the Citadel Oracle Special Edition. Really what the Special Edition just meant is that, as you can see here, it has red edges. The normal edition does not. And of course it came with this deck on the side. This is only 30 cards, but this also has sprayed edges. So yeah, this deck, oh, actually let me do what I did for the other thing because that'll make more sense. I really liked though doing the spread that I did with this. These decks are so good. So good. I did not think ever that I would like this limited of a color palette because as I've talked about before, I did have issues and I've had issues with Ari Weisner's Transient Light Tarot because it's also limited color palette and something about that just hasn't worked for me. I guess this one does, maybe because it's more of a theme that I like it's fantasy. I'm obsessed with fantasy. So for me, this somehow works. And these two obviously were made to go kind of together. They worked really well. I did a spread, as I said, that's found in the Deck of Emblems book. Actually, maybe I'll show. Oh, I have to go pick that up. Something dropped. It is this spread, right? This is not, again, this you would not find in the regular edition of the Citadel, but in this compass spread, it basically shows the different directions. So you have north, east, south, west, and then the center, and some nice questions to go along with it. And that, I felt, was a really, really profound reading, but I did it in an interesting way. I only used this deck as the center card. So I pulled one card as the center, and I used the directions to be more these ones. That's how I decided to interpret that spread. And it was pretty powerful, I'm not going to lie. It worked really well. Gave me some insights and kind of calmed me down in some ways. So this was just so nice to do. I love this deck. I'm always tempted to touch this deck. I really like the cardstock on these. These are probably, so far, these are the best Liminal 11 cardstocks I've encountered. It's not like I have like a crazy amount of Liminal 11 decks. I only really have the Seed and Sickle and the White Newman tarot, you know. But this, compared to those qualities, is the best quality, to be honest. I really, really like this cardstock, and I really wish they would keep this up, you know, for future decks and things that they do. But it was really nice to be able to do a reading with this one. Made me very excited. I might still pull this out in times ahead. I don't know. I probably will soon, though, even though I'm saying a lot of though. Because, how do I stop this? August is going to be a different focus for me. I'm not going to reveal what that is yet because, of course, I'm going to talk about it in my August musings. But I'm doing something different in August, so I probably will not be pulling this out for a little while, but wanted to show that off. Okay, let's now talk about the Literary Tarot. Literary Tarot. I actually didn't use this as often either. I feel like I used it more than the Dungeons and Dragons Tarot only because I pulled some cards from this when I was doing specific tarot tags more so. But I really used it the same amount of time that I use the Dungeons and Dragons now that I think about it. A lot of you know my thoughts on this deck, but I am somebody who still likes to try, even if I'm not and fully enjoying the experience. I still try to use the deck, even if the cards feel awful. Literary Tarot. It gave me a week ahead spread. I reflected on it. It was nice to see the visuals. I like using it as good examples of like rep for specific cards. Other than that, was it very profound for me? Not currently, but maybe it'll have its time to shine at a different time. I'm not going to be using this during the month of August, so I don't know when it'll make an appearance again, unless I, again, use some of these cards for very specific tags like I have during the month. Yeah, there's not too much to say on this. There's not too much to say. And I do need to speed up because I didn't realize how long this video was. But yeah, Literary Tarot. I did use it during the month of July. I use it for a week ahead spread and then some tarot VRs. Other than that, I didn't use it much. But I want to talk about the deck that I did use. So stay tight for that. Okay, the last most important deck that I used during the month of July is, of course, my Raven's Prophecy Tarot. As you guys know, if you've been around my channel a while, this is my oldest tarot deck. So for that reason, I really, 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 really try to only take it out during times when I think I really want to use it because I'm trying to be precious with it, because you guys can even tell I did edge mine, but even through the edging you can see like the wears and the tears, because this is my only tarot deck for years. Can you believe? This deck is still one of the most important players in my tarot collection because It was my first deck. It will always be profound for me. This deck always reacts every time I touch it. I don't know how to explain that. It gets very warm in my hands. It knows who I am. It reacts. It gives me the most accurate readings that I do, really, like most accurate readings. So every time I need to do like a really profound reading, or I guess what some would say is closer to like shadow work, I don't know. I tend to use this deck just because of its accuracy piece. This deck was very important also in the month of July because I did do, if you watched my turning 30 video, you'll know, you would have seen this deck made a big role in that big 12 card spread that I did. As usual, always gives me profound insights. Always profound. I've not had a time where it's really led me wrong. You know, it knows what to tell me, and it tells me like it is, even if it hurts. And for that reason, like, I don't know. I'm always going to love this deck. I'm always going to keep it. And I also appreciate it because of this version of the deck. As you can see, Lua on cardstock. Whenever this was, no, 2015, I think, when this deck came out. I pre-ordered it, so I'm pretty sure I got the first printing ever of this deck. At that time, the cardstock was really thin. And as you can see, it was like glossy, but it's not obnoxiously glossy. I don't know if that's also just from wear and tear of my deck. But as you can see, it wasn't obnoxiously glossy. But I've seen people get this deck now, and I think the cardstock is slightly different. I think it's like slightly, it looks like it's slightly thicker, maybe, but it's definitely glossier. I'm like, what the hell? What happened? So this cardstock, I love it. This is like one of my favorites ever. Love this deck. Super important. Gave me very profound readings. Always will. Always will be in my collection. I would literally, if my house was, this is like only 10, like situation. If I could only grab like a handful of my decks, this would be one of the first that or the first really that I grab because of its profoundness for me, right? Love, 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 love this deck. And with that, if you stuck around this long in my musings, I want to say thank you, because sometimes I go on tangents, especially with books, when I talk about books. And yeah, I always just have a lot to say. Listen, you came to my channel. You're going to get what you're going to get. So yeah, thank you so much though if you've been watching, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye.